It's Daniel Smith from Jets Guru. Welcome to the show. All gas, no brakes. Let's go, Jets. Woo!
With each completion like that, he only gains confidence. Here's one to the end zone, wide open, Elijah Moore.
They had lost 5 consecutive games. The Jets are coming out to play. Lawson. Jack Lawson deflected, got the cam and picks it off. And the Jets will have it at the 14-yard line. White. To the end zone, they got the lead. Touchdown, Tyler Croft, a former Bengal. 5 rushing yards for White. Handoff to Moore. Back to Crowder. They got the 2 to the quarterback, White. And they lead by 3.
What's going on, Jets Nation? CJ the Painkiller D. Simone here, and you are watching Jets. Now, give it up for your host, Mr. Daniel Smith!
Woo! Here again, another episode for you guys. Matt says, is it possible to fit an entire defensive unit on a milk carton? Yeah. In this case, for the New York Jets, I would say absolutely. They've had practically the worst defense anyone has ever seen in the last 4 weeks, minus one team in the 60s, which was the Giants. So the Jets defense has performed exceptionally poor, unfortunately. The offense, it's more the talk of the town now than the Jets. We're so used to being so defensive-minded as an organization, that to see them actually be better offensively and struggle defensively is a real problem, because you have a defensive head coach. So, of course, when the defense performs badly, he's going to catch even more media attention, even more problems with people and fans and everything, because he's a defensive coach. Why is the defense playing like this? So it's tough. It's been tough the last few weeks. Me personally, if you had to ask me honestly, what I'm more disappointed in is actually the fans. This has been the least enjoyable Jets Guru season that I've done in the last few years. And it's because of just the hostility that the fans have had. Adam Gase got a fairer shake than Robert Saleh. Sam Darnold got a fairer shake than Zach Wilson, even though Zach Wilson's only started a handful of games in his career to begin with. And it's just been a bunch of nonsense talk, a bunch of just spouting off without any facts or any even long-term say so. You don't know how this team is going to play out in the future, so we can only talk about how they look today. And today they look awful. They look every bit of what Robert Saleh talked about just a couple weeks ago. And he said this, and I thought when he said this that, people would take it more to heart and realize, hey, yeah, it is true. Nobody wants to hear that they're the youngest team in the league. Well, you have to. You have to. It matters. You guys act like that doesn't matter. It's mattered in every single year with every single team, pretty much, with an exception of sometimes you put a team together, everything clicks. But it's very rare in football because there's so many moving pieces that it's hard for a bunch of young guys, like the Fab Five in college basketball, a bunch of young guys coming out there making noise. It's a different game with football. And you have a rookie head coach. You have an offensive coordinator who's figuring out how to design a playbook that fits not only for his play call style, but also the personnel that he has on the table. And so when I look at this team, the youngest team in the league, starting the most rookies who have the most snaps with a whole new coaching staff, I came into the season thinking, 6 wins, right? 5, 6 wins, 8 if everything was perfect. And the minute that Lawson tore his knee in camp, that was over for me. And when you look at the rest of this team and how they're put together, I mean, they tried to do a lot on the offensive line to mix things around. I don't think the offensive line has been the culprit this season. Obviously, when you look at it, the Jets aren't able to get to the quarterback and force turnovers. I believe we had our first interception of the year, if I'm not mistaken, maybe second last game. And when you're a team that can't force turnovers, you can't get after the quarterback and sack him consistently. What you're going to have is teams just kind of beating you down. And that's what's been happening with the New York Jets. The Jets are giving up 130 yards on the ground. They look awful, kind of gutless up the middle. And it's been tough. It's been tough to watch that for sure. It's been nice to see Michael Carter have a really good season. It's been nice to see Elijah Moore start to pick it up now that he's being targeted more. So I like to see stuff like that. But overall, it's been a tough season to watch. But I knew this was going to happen. Everybody else gets a first-year reprieve, a pass, may I say you, because they're learning everything for the first time and they're installing everything for the first time. How is Zach Wilson going to have a grasp of an offensive coordinator who's trying to put together himself with all new players where he's trying to figure out the rhythm? And the same thing with Mike White and all these other guys. It's not easy. I mean, we sit here and we like to yell and say, oh, well, how come they're put this and that? The reason why Mac Jones looks so good is because of the coaching staff. They're not asking him to do too much. They have an offensive system that tailors to his skill set. And when you do that, it's an easier game. Mac Jones isn't asked to do what Trevor Lawrence is doing. He's not being asked to do what Fields is doing. He's not being asked to do what Wilson or any of these other quarterbacks are doing for their teams, minus Trey Lance. Get the ball out quickly, hand it off, screens, and then you take your opportunities. You have a playbook system, a scheme that's been in New England for over 10 years. When you plug these guys in with these veterans, and mind you, the Patriots, were they a 2-win team last year? I'm trying to remember if they were or not. But last time I checked, the Jets were. And there was a stat that was posted on the TV screen that I took a screenshot of. And on it, it showed the team starting the most rookies and how many snaps. And when you go through that list, it's the New York Jets, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Detroit Lions, and there's one other team. If you stack together all those teams' wins and losses, it's like 34 losses and like 11 or 12 wins. Yet the Jets are the ones who are getting the most beat down out of everyone from their fans and everyone else. If you go on the Jaguar message boards or you go on these other message boards, you're not seeing that type of level of just frustration and hate because they realize Trevor Lawrence, it's his first year in the NFL. And again, every other quarterback, it seems, besides Zach Wilson, got a first-year pass. Every other scheme and team and new organization that was put together and new coaching staff got the year. Even Adam Gase got the year. And people are going to say, well, Dan, Adam won 7 games his first year. Yeah, granted. But do you remember the first half of that season? And do you remember that they turned it on in the second half and that they played one of the weaker schedules in the league? Because we were so juiced up for that, only to come into the next year and completely fall on our face and become a 2-win team. Well, we already have 2 wins this year. 2 wins against playoff teams, the Titans and the Bengals. And they were good wins, okay? And there was a few other games where we hung in there, but eventually wind up losing, like young teams do, who don't know how to finish, who don't know the personnel, who don't really know the play calling, just don't have a feel for it. If any of you have ever played sports at any point in time, when you first start the season, you're learning something new. You just don't have a feel for where people are going to be. You don't know how Davis comes in and out of routes in traffic because you're not used to seeing Davis. You're not used to seeing these guys. And it's easy for us to sit here and say, well, this is awful. Get everybody out the door. And I've heard that. I've heard people say, get rid of Wilson, fire Saleh. I mean, guys, you got to have some clarity here, okay, and understand the full situation of what's going on. And you can't throw 30 years of Jets fandom on these kids that just got here. It's just not fair. It's not fair, and it's an impossible situation. And I told you guys earlier in the season what was going to happen if we persisted with this negativity on a team that won 2 games last year, picked the number 2 pick in the draft. I mean, I don't know what you were expecting. You should have took all of the Johnson State out of it. They picked their own head coach. They got draft picks that they wanted. You should have held on to that and been like, we're moving in a positive direction. And we are still moving in a positive direction, because last year, I know it's been a long time and the Jets are losing right now, but last year was an absolute disaster. Not this. The Jets had expectations last year to take that next step into the 8 to 10 win, mark, coming off the 7 wins. You figured Darnold was going to take that next step, and they just never did. The team that we're playing this Sunday, right? They had expectations to make the playoffs, and they're 3-7, and you don't see people getting up in arms with what they're trying to do. And they literally can go about firing their coach and doing everything. So Miami fans are in a way worse situation than we are. Yet you would never know that. You would never know that. And so, it's been when Robert Saleh came out and said that, hey, some games are going to come out and are going to look like, wow, they really put it together. They look like a playoff team. And there's going to be other games where they look like they shouldn't even be on the field. And that's what it's like with a new organization, practically, with everything just brand new. And I think if you readjusted your expectations earlier in the season, you would have had a different look to the season, because I see a few bright spots for sure. I still see a lot of holes, but most of all, what I see out of everything is a lot of youth, a lot of green, a lot of learning to be done from these guys. And it's going to get done. And I truly believe that. I'm not giving up on this Jet situation yet. Not at all. You got a team that's going to have probably 2 top 15 picks, maybe even better. You're going to have a team with multiple mid-round picks. You're going to have a team that's still in the positive as far as the cap space is concerned. You're going to have another year of offensive and defensive schemes taught to these young players so they can get it under their belts, know more. You're telling me when you first started whatever career you were in that you were just as good as you were day one than you were now? Of course not. You're better now. You know the ins and outs. You know where people are going to be. You know what you're supposed to do. You know how to cut corners and still get the same results. All these things come into play with time. And you're talking about half a season, guys. I mean, it's been absolutely pathetic, some of the things I've seen for a half a season. And it's just really been disheartening to see that Adam Gase and just his complete lack of detail, heart, passion for the game and for the New York Jets. And we're letting that guy get a better shake, a better chance than Robert Saleh, who gives you honest cuts, who gives you honest opinions. And it's funny, too, because when you look at this, it's like everybody cries all the time when a guy like Marshawn Lynch comes up to the stage and goes, I'm just here so I don't get fined. I'm just here so I don't get fined. So, Marshawn, how was the game last week? I'm just here so I don't get fined. Hey, Marshawn, how many yards do you think you'll have next week against the Packers? I'm just here so I don't get fined. And everybody rolls their eyes and they chuckle and they laugh. But there's a reason for that. Because when these people are honest with you and they give you a real piece of them, you kill them for it. You absolutely kill them for it. And there's no better example of that than the Rex Ryan, Robert Saleh thing that just happened. And Kevin, it's interesting to me because if you actually listen to the interview, actually, first off, before I get there, let me say something about Keyshawn Johnson for a second. Okay. Keyshawn Johnson, I don't know why these ESPN and all these other sports outlets, I don't know why they keep trying to bring him in as the New York Jets commentator, because he clearly does not like the New York Jets organization. He's never had anything good to say about them. And when the Jets were actually good, he was quiet. And it's just, I don't know why. He goes out of his way to kill the Jets on everything and act like he was some kind of player that was, a team player, someone who was all about New York. He was not. He was selfish. He talked his way off the team. And it just, to me, it's just so frustrating because if you actually listen to Robert Saleh and what he said, he was very honest. He wasn't mad. He wasn't screaming. He was just being honest. Like, hey, if Rex has more to say to me, I mean, he was in the building. He knows where to find me, and I just thought it was completely taken out of context. It was overdone 100%. And I really don't understand why we have to keep beating this man up when he's honestly, to me, personality wise, his honesty and his pressers have been better than any recent Jets coach we've had in quite a bit of time. And then we have Rex Ryan, who I love Rex Ryan, but this guy always had something to say that was outlandish or off cuff, way more than what Robert Saleh could ever say. And now they're beating up Robert Saleh because when they asked him about Mike White and could he be a starter in the future for the Jets, he said, I don't know. We'll see. Because honestly, what else are you going to say? Of course, we'll see. What if he came out and he threw for 300 and then he came out and threw for 300 again, and then he came out and threw for a couple TDs and didn't have the game that he had last week against the Bills? Now, if he would have said, oh, absolutely not, Zach Wilson is going to be our quarterback from the jump, no matter what happens, no matter what we do. And then White comes out there and kills it for the last 3 games. Now everyone's saying, why would you say that? Why would you this, that? So you can't win. And that's why these guys, they shut up. They stop saying things and they become very political with their answers. And then you don't get the pressers. You don't get the stuff that you really want to hear because we jump on everything.
Yeah, a million good points there. I mean, I agree with you 100% on the Keyshawn Johnson stuff. Nothing exciting comes out of him. He always says just terrible things about the Jets, just like he doesn't understand what's going on. And whether he has some sort of bias because his USC quarterback didn't work out for us or whatever it is, I mean, totally agree, right? I mean, we all love Crobet and the team the wide receiver crew that we put together right after getting rid of him, right? We brought in Coles, we brought in Santana Moss. Like, he ultimately ended up being replaceable, whether he likes it or not. Parcells in the very next draft picked up Lavernius in the 3rd round. After that regime left, we picked up Santana with a low first-round pick and picked up right where we needed to go. And Pennington used the new sets of receivers, and we were fine well after Keyshawn. And I think he holds that against us. And whatever it is irrelevant. We have our own problems just like he has his own problems. And totally agree with you on a lot of the points. We knew going into the season that the second half of the season was going to be better than the first half of the season. And some of the areas you're already starting to see where we turn the corner. The offensive line, like you already pointed out. Last game against the Bills, which is a very good defense, we gave up 1 sack. Even in that atrocious game, we gave up 1 sack. Against the Colts, the last week, we gave up 1 sack again. And these are the types of progress where the first 3 games we gave up 14. And you had a bunch of people learning the scheme, learning their assignments. You had young teams. And this is very different. And I know we're going to get more into the Rex and the Saleh thing. And some of the people where you say, oh, Mac Jones is obviously better. Some of these people, including Sanchez, came into mature situations. Rex took over a very mature team. We already had Brick. We already had Mangold. We already had Moore. We already had Faneca. We already had Damian Woody. We already had a mature team. We had David Harris. We had Revis. We had Ellis. We had guys on the D-line. We had guys that were ready to go, ready to perform. And we would just plug in little holes with free agents, just adding a Cromartie, adding a piece here, adding a piece there. And it was a ready-made team. Robert Saleh did not walk into a ready-made team in any phase. Even our good assets, like a Quinnen Williams, the dude's 24 years old, right? Like, he's still a young ascending. He's not even in his prime. Quinnen Williams is not in his prime. Even with how good he is, he's a top 5 defensive tackle. He's still learning. And it's across the board. Our offensive line, we're still putting it together. It's not a finished product, but they have learned the scheme and improved their communications. They're performing better. Our secondary overperformed. Our linebackers are underperforming. We got a lot of areas for improvement. When Rex got here, it was you need a quarterback because you have Thomas Jones, right? You had leaders in the locker room. We're still developing that. What Robert Saleh, and I agree with Rex and not comparing them, because Saleh didn't walk into a ready-made team. Mr. Smith over here has been saying it all year. This is a true rebuild, like a true rebuild, where you're rebuilding the D-line, which is close, but we'll probably still add one or two pieces, rebuilding the O-line. We just got wide receivers. We just got Corey Davis. We just got Elijah Moore. We just got these guys. It's 9 games into having these guys. We're totally rebuilding the running backs, right? I mean, Carter and Ty Johnson. Ty Johnson was barely used last year and not used enough. Now we got a running back group. So all of these rooms are brand new. And if you listen to us all year long, you listen to us on our audio podcast, you see the things that are said on Twitter, it was always going to be a learning curve. In the first 10 games were going to be tough. In the second 6 to 7 games should be better. That's when we should start seeing improvement. And that's what exactly what we're seeing. The other point that I just want to hit before I turn it back over is on the fans. The fans have been insane. And I would say, fans, do you even know what you want, right? Literally. And it was Ramon, who you've seen on the show a million times, had a great tweet about it this week, where he said, last week you guys were all about winning, right? Don't bring Wilson back. Play White. He gives us our best chance to win. This week, the coaches came out and told you, look, we have tape on White. The league has tape on White, which they didn't have before the Bengals game. Look, what he does is he works the short to medium game at best. And sitting in that stadium last week, I was begging him, please look at somebody other than Carter and Johnson. Throw it to anybody else, please, God. And whatever the coaches saw on the tape, whatever they've seen in the classroom, whatever they've seen in 2 weeks of preparation, they said, you know what? The next best set of tape, which I'm sure we'll get to later, is Flacco. And they think that he's the next best thing to help the offense, to help Wilson with what they're going to put on tape and give us the best chance to beat Miami. And what do the fans say? Oh, we need to go back and we need to groom White and not play Flacco, who gives us the best chance to win. When just last week you said the exact opposite, which is why I'll say to the end of my days, the Jets, don't listen to your fans. Don't. Stay your course. You have a plan. Follow the plan. If your plan works, dude, you're going to get fired, right? I would rather get fired following my own plan than the fans' plan. So whatever Joe Douglas and Saleh have in place, whatever the plan is, they got to follow that course and not say, I'm going to pull quarterbacks every week. Or if they decide to pull quarterbacks, they have a plan for it. So be patient, and let's see what happens this week.
Absolutely. A lot of good points there, Kevin. And I think when you look at this too, within the clarity that we're talking about, let's just look at some of the opponents that the Jets have played to start the season. So you're talking about a Carolina team that first game of the season, you know, when you looked at that defense and the way that the Carolina team started off, they look like a playoff team. But to be honest with you, they're only 2 games out of the division. Okay, they have a good defense. They have 5 wins. Okay, New England right now they're 6-3. Okay, or 6-4. Okay, they're a potential playoff team. You look at Denver; they have 5 wins right now. Denver, they're one game out of being in the division lead. Okay, you got Tennessee; they're 8-2. Besides Atlanta, besides Atlanta, who by the way is 4-5, almost a 500 team. Then you got New England again, 6-4. Cincinnati, they're 1 game or 1.5 games out of first place, 2 games. Then you look at Indianapolis. What is Indianapolis? Indianapolis is 5-5, so they have 5 wins on the season. You look at Buffalo; they're a playoff team leading the division. So it was not an easy schedule to start the season, regardless of whether the Jets were going to be ready or not. But then you're also talking about a 2-win team coming off an absolute disaster, tons of turnover, tons of new pieces, new coaching all over the place, new players all over the place. You got to have some kind of clarity here. The fact we even beat Tennessee in a comeback win, which I think was a statement game to show you that when all things are right, this is what Wilson could look like. And then you see something that happened in the Cincinnati game that I was able to attend, where Mike White had an excellent game. And obviously Cincinnati got taken by surprise. And then when you look, I think if you look at those 3 games, now Mike White had that nice drive before he got hurt, wound up hitting Elijah Moore for the touchdown. But you could tell Indianapolis knew what the Jets wanted to do offensively the drive before that, right? And then you look at the Buffalo game, and they just take away those short routes, get in his face, and put pressure on Mike to kind of throw the ball up in the air. And when you look at those throws that Mike White had in those games, the reason why I would have went to Flacco, and I'm being honest here, I'd rather see Mike White personally just because he's a young kid. And so I want to know if this kid has enough to be the backup for Zach Wilson. So that's why I would have played Mike White. But those throws, those turnovers that Mike White made in that third quarter were awful. Now, you could get on Zach Wilson about his throws and his interceptions and all that, but the ones that Mike White threw were awful, okay? He was not reading the field well, and a lot of those interceptions were just little routes, the ones where he usually completes well. And I just think that he really got shook, and he's allowed to get shook because it's his third start of his career. So I would have preferred to see Mike White. I think it's the one thing about Saleh that I do not like is that this time around is I don't like the whole, oh, well, we want to bring a veteran in, and this, like, you had a chance to bring a veteran in before the season, and you didn't want him there. Okay. And now you want to talk about bringing in a veteran in, and you want to talk about the competitiveness and this, that, and the third. These players were just crying for Mike White, talking about, oh, I knew Mike White was this, I knew Mike White was that. So Mike White has a bad game, and now you go away from him when he had an excellent game. And then he also had a game in Indianapolis before he got hurt where he was starting to trend in the right direction. You just snatch him again after the Buffalo Bills, who, the Bills crushed the Jets a couple years ago with a backup quarterback. So, I mean, it's just one of those things where I would have loved to see Mike White start again and then ultimately turn it all over to Zach Wilson in that Houston game, which Houston is really, really awful defensively. But I understand it, especially this year with the fan base that I've seen and how they've acted. If White is to come out against the Dolphins and tear it up, you go, okay, well, I want to get back to Wilson. He's healthy now. So now I want to give it back to my second round, but you can't because now everyone's clamoring and yelling and this and that. And the minute Zach Wilson touched the field and he throws a bad pass, it's just, how it's going to be. And so they're just trying to do the best thing by their young quarterback who they invested a lot in, and including the second pick of the draft last year. No other quarterback is being treated like this by their fan base. None of them, or the team in general. This year should be a complete pass for the Jets. Now, what I will say is this. When you look at the Jets schedule in the second half coming up here, okay, and you look at these games, Miami, Houston, Philadelphia, New Orleans, Miami, Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, Buffalo, that stretch from November 21st to December 26th, the Jets should be a much improved football team. And this is where I'm really going to judge Saleh and company, because it's the second half of the season. You kind of got punched in the mouth the last month. Okay. You need to try some new things. You need to switch things up defensively. And then offensively, keep pushing the ball down the field, keep trying to score, keep trying to be efficient, keep running with Michael Carter, keep screening, keep doing all these little things, right? But I want to see improvement here, because looking at these opponents, Miami, Houston, Philadelphia, New Orleans, Miami, Jacksonville, these are actually winnable games. And I know the Jets are really bad, right? They're really, really bad. But they have just enough offensive weapons that they could beat these teams, because these teams are giving up a lot of points too and a lot of yards too. I mean, you look at the Dolphins and you look at what they're giving up. I mean, they're almost spitting images of each other. You're talking about points per game. The Dolphins give up 17. The Jets give up 17-9. Right? Points allowed per game is where the Jets give up a little bit more. Total yards, the Jets give up 30 more total yards. Yards passing, the Jets give up 30 more yards. Yards rushing, the Jets give up 3 more yards. Okay? I mean, as far as getting rushing and passing. Yards allowed, they're only off by 30 anyways. And passing, 10. Rushing yards allowed, 30. So it's like this is a winnable game for the New York Jets. But I think after what they saw from Mike White in his element, throwing really bad passes and not reading well, I think that they're thinking to themselves, let's get a veteran in here, right? Let's slow things down, okay? We still have other veterans on this team, and we want to give ourselves the best chance to win. Some people think that's not Flacco. I think right now it is. I would prefer to see Mike White, because he's young. But Mike White did not look good throwing the ball down the field. And even he still hasn't. And those little 5-yard checkdowns are great and all that kind of stuff, and letting receivers and running backs do the work for you. Granted, I love it. And Zach Wilson, in that little snippet of watching Mike White, he should take a piece of Mike White's mental clarity of looking over the field and checking it down. I get it. But literally, that's the kid's whole offense. And you could see it now as the weeks are going on, that teams are starting to kind of clamp down on that type of stuff. And they're basically saying, okay, Mike White, throw the ball down the field. And honestly, I just don't think the kid has it like that. And he's a game manager. I think he's a guy that can come in, get you a couple games, while your starter's hurt. And I think ultimately that's why he's bounced around the league. We didn't find a diamond in the rough. This isn't Tom Brady, who was drafted in the 6th round and just needed an opportunity. Mike White has been in camp. People have seen what he is. He's a baller. He's a gamer. Anyone who gets to this level, okay, is a baller, is a gamer. A lot of these guys in high school were the best guys in their city or their town. And then you go into a bigger pool and you get washed up a little bit. And then you go into an even bigger pool and you get washed away a little bit, okay? So I think that the Jets said, listen, we already traded for Flacco because we didn't know what this kid had, okay? Let's get some use out of Flacco. And why not? He's a veteran. He's a guy that's been there, done that before. And honestly, it's a veteran, another person where Wilson can watch a little snippet and see if he could take something from whatever Flacco could bring to the table game day. Not only this, I would be more mad that Josh Johnson didn't get a shot, because this guy came in after Mike White was hurt and played a solid game, and he's been in your building and he's been grinding and trying to and doing all the right things. I would have rather see Johnson get a shot than Flacco. But if you drop a 6th-round pick on someone, check this out. They drop a 6th-round pick on Flacco. They don't even use Flacco. He gets killed anyways. Oh, well, you traded for Flacco. Why didn't you use him? Mike White had a terrible game. Why didn't you put Flacco in? So either way, the fans are going to kill this team because they can't get it through their heads that this is a true rebuild. And it makes sense because the Jets have never allowed the fan base to actually go through a rebuild, because every time the Jets were in a position to rebuild their franchise, they brought in a veteran quarterback. They try to scramble things around to compete with the back of the papers, to complement the defense instead of stripping it down for what it really needed to be. So even the old heads, even the Jet fans from years past who always like to tell me, I saw the Jets in 1969. Well, great. But you haven't seen a rebuild since what? Richard Todd times? I mean, you haven't seen it. Like, you really, really haven't seen a true rebuild for 35 years. Easy. You haven't really seen it. Mark Sanchez was not a true rebuild. He came in a ready-made team, and that hurt him because he wasn't allowed to do the things that a rookie quarterback is supposed to do. When Mark Sanchez was being coddled and managed because the Jets were trying to win, Matthew Stafford was throwing the ball all over the field, learning how to play quarterback, and ultimately was better for him. Now, he was stuck with the Lions, which sucked, but ultimately he became a better quarterback for it because he was able to do what quarterbacks do, throw the football. Remember, Zach Wilson said something earlier, way early. It may even been in preseason, where he's like, I'm trying to figure out where I could put the football, what I can get away with. And that is true in game situations as well. You got many of these kids who come in, they're winning all the time, nonstop. They come into the NFL and they come to a bad team. They don't know. Well, everyone says, oh, the Jets are awful. They're a terrible team. But as a guy who's been nothing but a winner his whole life, he goes, well, I'm going to be the one that changes it. So he comes into the game and he's throwing the ball down the field and doing the things that, his skill set is ready for. Ultimately, he made a lot of bad decisions too. And honestly, I think LaFleur, he called a totally different football game than what you saw for White. White wasn't just taking what he was seeing. I truly believe that when Wilson gets back, you're going to see a different kid, just like you saw with Darnold when he came back from the Minnesota game his rookie year. And when he got hurt and he came back and started playing well, I truly, truly believe that. You even saw as much and heard as much from Wilson when he said, there's things that I've seen from Mike White's game that I think I can incorporate. So like already Zach Wilson, I can tell, is going to probably take that advice and probably check it down a lot more, realizing, man, I can get 400 yards and I have a better arm than Mike White. I could get the ball faster out of my hands than Mike White. I could do more trickier things and I could run with my legs better than Mike White can. This is how I'm thinking if I'm Zach Wilson. Let me slow it down. Let me check it down to Michael Carter. And I think you will see that when he gets back. But the way everything is proceeded with the fan base, it's just been absolutely awful. And it's not just on the message boards. It's in the stands too. Some of the reports that people have said about how Jet fans have been acting in the stands to other Jet fans who are just cheering and trying to enjoy themselves because, they may not have a lot of money. And so when they go to the stadium, this is their time. Let them cheer. Let these people cheer for their football team. Take your negative attitudes, take your opinions and shove them where where it belongs, because it's just absolutely ridiculous from what I've seen from the fans, not the organization, because this is an organization that has just started. The only knock that I have on this football team, again, is the fact that just be honest with it. Just be like, Zach is our guy and we want to bring him in against Houston. We want to make sure he's 100% healthy and want to bring him in against Houston. And to me, I think the only screw up here is that Mike White is not starting against the Dolphins. And I don't care if Mike White has 400 yards against the Dolphins. I'm still starting Zach Wilson against Houston. And I'm saying, I think Mike White is a really good backup. And you know what? If Mike thinks he's the starter and y'all think he's the starter, guess what? You got camp next year. Mike has another opportunity to prove himself. But we invested a number 2 pick on Zach Wilson, and we're going to use him, right? And I just think that no matter what Robert Saleh says and does, he gets criticized to a level that Adam Gase never did. It's almost getting to the point, even some of the things that Todd Bowles did, like Saleh's not getting any type of breathing room, and it just doesn't make any sense to me, Kevin. It really doesn't. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, a couple things, and Kevin Jackson hit the nail on the head in the comments for those that are following below. And for those that watch us later who can't catch us live, I recommend reading through the comments. There's a lot of good points as we're talking that a lot of our viewers add in and supplement. I think it's fantastic out there. So thank you, everyone, for contributing to the show in your own way. But whatever I put on tape, I think, again, I keep highlighting Mr. Smith's great points. White showed him a lot of things. And those trick plays, man, we ran 6 trick plays in 6 quarters of football, including the Colts game. It was like, where was all those halfback passes? And we had like 3 flea flickers, and they'd flick it back, and we'd throw a 13-yard pass on a flea flicker, right? I remember Chad Pennington would throw like a 40 or 50-yard bomb even on those. And White did what he could do. The one piece, and yes, it would have been fine if we went to White this week, but Flacco should be able to put on tape, and this is what Mr. Jackson highlighted, another, piece of work for Wilson to go back and study. The goal would be able to say Flacco, as we saw last year, took 1,000,000 shots downfield. It's like if you want to blitz the house, which Miami did a lot last week, for those who watched the Thursday night game, Miami against Baltimore, where they beat the crap out of Lamar Jackson. Why did Lamar Jackson look like a hot turd against Miami's defense? Because he can't throw down the field. They put guys all over him and said, beat me deep. I dare you, Mr. MVP. And the guy whose arm is a little bit better than Bridgewater's couldn't do it. So they were like, hey, we're going to be fine. I dare you. Throw deep. So the Jets are going into this game saying, Flacco, I need you to do what White did, and I need you to do what you did last year. They want to blitz the house. We're going to send Moore and Davis deep. And we saw, Perryman, who I don't think is even on a team. I'm pretty sure he got cut by Detroit a couple weeks ago. He had 3 catches over 70 yards in 2 games. Perryman, of all people. And Mims was looking like, a stud in those couple games he got to play, right? He was setting Jets records for consecutive games with over 40 yards receiving. So if Flacco does anything, and I joked about it in some of my comments, like he'll chuck and duck, right? He's going to throw it out there Let his receivers try to make a play. And in one of the games, his chuck and duck games, he overthrew Perriman and got picked. We ended up losing on the last drive of the game. I think that was against the Patriots and Cam. But anyways, for better or worse, he's going to throw it out there. And hopefully, just like you said, Wilson can go back and look at this tape and say, hey, these are the things White did well in this offense, which was throw to the running backs 22 times and have a 400-yard game just throwing to the running backs. Look, you can win in the league doing that. But you also got to take your shots downfield and take them at the right time. And those are some things. Flacco doesn't have Wilson's arm strength, but he has more arm strength than White. So we should see some things. He's going to have to challenge it because Miami, if they're going to sell out like they did against Baltimore, Flacco's going to have to throw deep. So I think it's just it's a learning opportunity, right? And Josh Johnson, I know there's a lot of Jets fans that are high on him. My only thing on Johnson is I got two things on Johnson. One, he's been called up to the roster 2 times. Third time, they got to sign him to the active roster and keep him. So if they bring up Josh Johnson and play him again, they have to keep him on the roster. Right now, with White, with Wilson, with Flacco, who they traded for, they can't bring up Johnson unless they're going to keep him or they're going to have to cut him because they can't put him back on the practice squad. So the Jets are trying to keep 4 quarterbacks. It is what it is. The second piece about Josh Johnson, and I think this is where some fans get mixed up a little bit, and I know he had a great game against the Colts. He put up great stats. You guys remember that White had a hot start in that game, right? The Colts went right down the field. We played no defense like we usually do, and they got 7 points. And then White came right down, hit Elijah Moore over the top, tied the game, 7-7. White got knocked out on that play, right? The touchdown to Moore, he got knocked out. So Josh Johnson checked in at 7-7. Then somehow the game got to 42-10 before he scored 3 unanswered touchdowns. So he didn't exactly keep us in the game until the game was already over. And then at 42-10, he found 330 yards passing. So I just want to keep the performance a little bit in perspective. There was a little bit of prevent. There was a little bit of the Colts just trying to get out of the game healthy. The game was long over. And yes, it got close, but he could have had us at 42-20, 42-24. But no, it was 42-10 because we did nothing for 2 quarters. So I'm not saying Josh Johnson can't be a backup. I think he can, but he's a backup. So look forward to going into this game. Let's see what Flacco does, what he puts on tape. And all of this, hopefully, just like you said, sets up Wilson for success for that Houston game the following week.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. People are like, oh, the last time Flacco played the Dolphins, he threw a bunch of picks. I said, does that look like the same Dolphins team to you? I'm just saying, okay, because the Dolphins team that I saw was a team that was pushing for things. This team has completely fell apart. Okay, so you can't carry over what Flacco did in that game with different weapons and different people and different everything to this game. That was just a game. Just like this is a game. And honestly, I think this is a winnable game. I don't care what anybody says. I know the Jets haven't looked well, but the Dolphins haven't looked well either. And I like the weapons that we still have on this football team. And so this is definitely a winnable game between 2 bad football teams, because I don't care what the Dolphins did to Lamar Jackson. They're a bad football team right now. And until they're able to put together more wins, I mean, this is a team that was supposed to have 9, 10, maybe even 11 wins this year, pushing for a playoff spot. They are nowhere near that, folks. And I know that they're getting some guys back healthy and they're trying to piece it together, but this is not the same team. It has not translated over the same. It has not. And so to me, it's an absolute winnable game. Now, getting over to midterm grades fairly quickly, because I mean, honestly, there's not really too much to say. The grades are going to be probably somewhat consistent across the board, but here we go. So for QB, I'll give it a C- for QB. And the reason why I say this is because you never thought in a million years that you would see a Mike White game in Cincinnati. That alone bumps you up from an F to a D. I really honestly really liked the win against the Titans. I thought that really showed you the full complement of what Zach Wilson is able to do when it's all put together ultimately. And I think he will be more of that than the turnover side of things. He is a rookie quarterback, and we have to keep that into play. I have liked Josh Johnson coming and doing what he does. Obviously, he's a backup. It was garbage time, but listen, he could have fell right in line with other games I've seen where he started throwing picks and turnovers and stuff, and that wasn't the case. He was professional. He ran the offense. And this is a guy that hasn't gotten many reps with any of the guys that he was actually playing with either, because a guy like Johnson's only getting a few reps, a practice with these types of guys, if that. And so I thought he did a solid job again. So I thought the Jets kind of hit on their camp and backup quarterbacks. I think they've all played pretty well for the most part when they've came into action. Haven't hurt the team too bad. I mean, listen, the Jets were not winning that game, I don't think, with any quarterback. That defense was absolutely horrible, and they allowed Josh Allen to do whatever he wanted. So Mike White would have had to put together, another Bengals type of performance where he was nearly flawless just to keep the Jets in that game. So I'll give the Jets a C minus. I'm not going to go to a D because I think they've played well considering this is a new offense that they're all learning. Mike White has never even started a game before. Zach Wilson never started a game, and I still think they've done all right. So I'll go C minus with that. The running back room, I like the running back room for the New York Jets. I'll go C minus there as well. Tevin Coleman hasn't been really an option for me. He's always hurt. I would have loved to have him a couple years ago when he was with the Falcons. He's still a guy that can make a cut and move up the field. He still has good speed, just can't stay healthy. The guy's always banged up. Michael Carter has been a revelation for this team. I believe as this offense develops over the course of the year, as this team puts together things next year, I think you could use him in many different ways and creatively he can produce. I like what you see. I think Ty Johnson is underrated, even still this year. I mean, every time they've called his name, he's made big catches. He's made big runs. I think the 1-2 punch of Carter Johnson, I like it. So I'm willing to go C minus there with that. The offensive line, again, to begin the year, they weren't very good, but like Kevin said, they've been picking it up a lot better. Again, guys have never played together. You lose Mekhi Becton, your big pick there. I thought, Fant did a good job sliding over. AVT started off bad, but, he picked it up. McGovern, you guys know how I feel about him. I'm not even going to bring him up anymore. Van Rotten, he needs to go. Moses, and all right, yeah, so I would say probably C minus again on the offensive line. Edoga, all these type of people that they don't mean anything to me. Joe is done and he's tried. I mean, he basically put 2 different offensive lines almost on the field the last 2 years. He's trying. It's not for the lack of effort, and you got to remember again, just because you have money doesn't mean that you're going to sign the best guys. Some people just don't want to go certain places. And so I think with what the money, the people that were available, I think the trades and the draft and what he was able to do, I think he tried to do the best he can. And I think they're kind of picking it up. They're getting used to this offense and how they're supposed to block in this offense, and especially with that zone blocking. I think they're doing an all right job right now. They got the weak part of the schedule coming up. Again, if I don't see the Jets pick it up in the next month and a week or 2 or so, I'm going to have some real concerns with this coaching staff, because these are very winnable games, in my opinion. If not winnable, very competitive games. Even as bad as the Jets defense has been, their offense really isn't that bad. I'm being honest with you. I know a lot of people might laugh at me, but the Jets offense is not that bad. They've got weapons. They could score points, and they're playing some bad teams too. So I think you'll see a lot of close games. And as far as I'm concerned, offensive line C minus. Wide receivers, I'm going to give the wide receivers. See, this is tough for me, Kevin, because I think Corey Davis is underperformed. He's had some key drops and some key mistakes, including that fumble last week. I like him as a talent. I like what he can do. I just think he hasn't, he's made a lot of mistakes, so that's going to knock him down a peg. I like what I see from Elijah Moore. Remember, Elijah Moore started off with a leg injury, and so he's starting to turn it on now. They're featuring him a little bit more. So I really, really like it. Keelan Cole, he made some nice catches on this team. Mims has been underutilized. Jamison Crowder's had some good catches in the offense. So I'm going to give a B for the receivers. I think the talent is there. I think that the Jets have struggled as a team, but the talent is there, and I think they've done a pretty good job. Tight end, I'm going to go with an F for tight end. The Jets just weren't really able to find any talent at that tight end position, kind of fell on their face there with that. Didn't really make sense to me how they went about even approaching the tight end situation, considering they just came from San Francisco and saw what a guy like Kittle can do and in a similar type of an offense. And I just think they could have went a little harder on the tight end position, but I think that's why they went a little extra with the wide receivers. But either way, I think it's just been kind of a non-factor for this team. So I'm going to go with an F with the tight end. I would say, what we're going to move on to now. So we go to defense. I said defensive line. I'm going to give the defensive line a D right now. Honestly, they can't stop the run for nothing. We're back to the days of, I can't remember his name right now. The guy from Kentucky, Kevin. I think he's from Kentucky.
Dwayne Robertson.
There, he's just awful for us.
Robertson.
Yes, Dwayne Robertson. We're back to the we're back to the days where we cannot stop a nosebleed. Doesn't help that Mosley's a little bit thinner, up the middle, but he's great in coverage. He's all over the place. But they just don't have enough, and teams are really picking on him in that fashion. I also thought, even with Carl Lawson being out, I really thought this defensive line would cause a lot more problems, even with the people that they have. They're not awful as far as their sack category is concerned, but I thought I would just see a little bit more from them, so I'm a little bit disappointed. The linebacking core, it's hard to grade. They've been all banged up and all over the place, but for the linebackers, I'd probably have to go a D as well, except for the exception of Mosley. I really enjoy watching him play football. The cornerback situation, which I thought was going to be an F for this team before the season, has actually played pretty well considering, and I'm going to give them a C- for the cornerbacks. They've been getting shelled out a little bit recently, but that's a combination of a lot of different things. The Jets are falling behind. They're not getting pressure on the quarterback. They're not stopping the run, so drives are continuing. You got a lot of rookies out there. They haven't been able to create turnovers in the secondary, which has been tough for us. Marcus May is out now. Ashton's been in and out. There's been injuries, but these guys are really green. I thought I like what I saw from guys like Eccles and stuff like that before Eccles got hurt. So I'm very high on them right now, honestly, because there's a lot put on their plate, and they've done a pretty good job. They've struggled recently, but they've done a pretty good job. I like Bryce Hall and company, and I'm interested to see what they do in the offseason. I still think the Jets need to bring a veteran corner in who can compete either to be a number one or a number two to kind of round this unit out. And now with Marcus May being gone, again, I don't like seeing the Jets when they're weak up front in the middle and when they don't have safeties, because you just get beat over the top, and it's a gut punch. And then when you can't stop drives and teams are running up the middle, it's a gut punch. And we're getting back to those days where we're not getting the push up the middle. And now with the safeties being gone, the Jets really have to address that in the draft. And we'll get into that at the end of the season, who's available in college and free agency and stuff like that. But to me, that's a huge concern for the Jets going into the off season. Special teams, I'll give them a C- as well. Nothing flashy. Amendola has been okay. I don't like the way he kicks the football. It's a lot of line drive, movement to it, but they've done all right. Haven't got killed too much. I haven't seen teams really return any punt return TDs and these types of things. The Jets offense and just the team in general, they put the team in the special teams in awful positions. So I would go there with that. Coaching, I would say probably a D right now as far as the coaching is concerned. Your head coach is a defensive coordinator. They look awful, whether you like Saleh or not. That's his calling card. You would expect a little bit more. I haven't been impressed with Jeff Ulbrich and his play calling. Honestly, there's times where the Jets blitz where I'm like, why are they blitzing? And then there's times where they should blitz and they don't. And I'm not really impressed with him. And to be honest with you, to start the season, LaFleur was really, really bad. I thought he could have did some things to slow it down for Zach Wilson, and he just didn't do them. I think you'll see a better LaFleur when Wilson comes back, because I think he's figuring things out too. I think Zach was figuring things out, and they're going to come together and kind of fix this thing. So, but I would do a D for the coaching staff. As far as ownership's concerned, I'm giving the ownership a B, because they've stayed out of this. Okay, this is what Jet fans wanted. They wanted the Johnsons out of this. They wanted to leave it to the football people. And they mostly have. In the offseason, they said Joe's the guy, he picks his guy, and they've been out. They've been out of the way. They've been letting the football people do their thing. You haven't really heard much from any of these guys, and I like that. That's how they should operate it. You guys are shareholders. You guys are money makers. You guys aren't football people. And so, I still believe in what they did in this offseason, and I think they did an excellent job at this offseason. And so the way I see it is overall, I give this team a D because, one, they're 2-7. There's still a lot of things that need to be done. At the end of the year, they could still be, third, fourth pick. So overall, I would give them a D. Maybe a C minus. I guess if you average up all my C minuses, it'd be close to that. But I would say a C minus to a D overall as a team for the New York Jets. Kevin, what do you got?
All right, so we're probably going to differ in a couple of areas. Quarterback, I probably got a C minus. We have multiple games with 4 INTs, but it's what you expect, especially with Wilson missing some games and having to go with their backup. I got to give him a C minus at best, just because. Honestly, there's a couple games that we could have stole with that Carolina game, the Patriots game. Our defense was actually good. All their points came off those 4 interceptions. We've just had some really bad quarterback play, but then we've also had some strong second halves, almost across the board for Zach Wilson. Very strong second halves once he settles down, gets into the game plan. And like you already pointed out, some of the play calling hasn't helped. It's like we don't settle down play calling or execution into the second half. So quarterback play, I'm going to give a C minus. Offensive line, I'm going to give a little bit of a higher grade than you, just because I think that they've played better, especially with young quarterbacks not making decisions and getting the ball out quickly. But still a C plus. I mean, we haven't been able to develop a consistent run game. Intermittently, we've had some good run games, but not consistent. And same thing, obviously, the first 3 games, the pass blocking was brutal. I already said 14 sacks in 3 games is brutal, guys. But the last 4 games has been 2 sacks, 2 sacks, 1 sack, 1 sack. If you get down to 1 or 2 sacks a game, you can kind of live with that. It's going to happen. So, the other guys get paid too, as Parcells used to say. So I can live with that. So offensive line, C+. Running back room, I'll also give a C+. They're trending towards a B-. I think we've developed a groove with Johnson and Carter, but we need to develop consistency. And it's not their fault. I've said we had games with 130, 150 yards rushing as a unit. And the Jets need to have a way to establish that on a consistent basis and take pressure off the quarterback play. The offensive line needs to get better and help with that, but the running game needs to get better and help with that too. Wide receivers, Lord, that's such a tough one. It's funny because a lot of people have talked about Corey Davis as a bust free agent. And I'm like, well, you're going too far because we've had Tremaine Johnson. Like, that's a bust free agent, right? We've had Justin McCarrons. We've had some painful free agents that did nothing. And Davis had, like you said, the Titans game. Even the games where he has a couple drops, he's still, like, very serviceable. He still brings value. He still makes some plays. And then he still has games where he has a fumble, like last week. So, but Moore's coming along, Cole and Crowder, they're the least of our issues. So I kind of give them a B-. They're one of our stronger units, I think. Even when we've suffered injuries, like we started the year without Crowder, we still had good wide receiver play. We had a couple games without Davis. We won one of the games we didn't have Davis, right? So the Jets have had games missing wide receivers and other guys step in, and that's when Moore got hot. Right, the games Davis went out, all of a sudden Elijah Moore was like, let me get a couple touchdowns. Moore has 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games, guys. So I'll give him a B-. We don't have 2 receivers getting 100 yards a game or even a receiver consistently getting 100 yards a game. That's where I'd kind of like to see, to have us step it up to like the next notch. Like every week there's somebody who dominates. We're not quite there yet. Tight end is a C- at best, probably a D+. They're asked to block and scare them a little bit because we're going to throw to you when you don't expect it, when you don't see it coming. That's some of those creative plays that all of a sudden happen with Mike White, where he's running naked bootlegs and everyone's trying to take it. And he has a throwback to Ryan Griffin where he picks up 15 yards. And you're like, where has that been? So there's nothing special going on there. other than blocking and other than them making plays you never saw coming. So definitely D+ there. Flipping over to the defense, I mean, God, the D-line was so good to start the year. They were great in the Titans game. And then they give you games like the Patriots game where they scored 51. They could run it all day. The Atlanta game could run it all day. The Colts game could run it all day. I mean, the Bills game could do whatever they want, run or pass. Had no rush on Josh Allen, right? The big difference between people that were like, hey, look what the Bengals did. Josh Allen never looked comfortable. He had 3 fumbles in that game because he wasn't comfortable. And in that game last week, for anybody who watched it, especially us sitting there in the stands, Josh Allen was just relaxing, slapping 5 with the players, ushering them back to the huddle. He was comfortable all game. It was like he didn't even have to change into his uniform. He could just walk out in like sweats and a T-shirt and play. He was just out there like in his backyard. And God, I mean, I got to give them a C-, only because they've had some games that played well, but they probably deserve a lower grade. The D-line should be dominant. I know we don't have Lawson, we don't have Huff, but we have Rankins. We have John Franklin Myers. We have Quinnen Williams. We have Phillips back the last 2 games, and still we're not seeing what we need to see from that unit. Linebackers are going to be kind of a D+ to me. Mosley has had some games, but once the run it, we had that Colts game. They had 211 yards rushing without a single defensive player touching them. Like, that should never happen. I'm not saying they had 211 yards rushing in the game. They had 211 yards before a Jets player touched them. It's insane.
Yep,
That's
6
insane.
yards, 6.5 yards per carry without getting touched. Yep.
That is insane. You can't be 7 yards almost before your first defender is like, oh, let me go make a play on you. Like, the linebackers cannot let that happen. And I know we got a lot of inexperience, but that was a game Mosley played. So I'm giving them a D+, and I honestly think them and safety are going to be 2 areas we need like 3 guys. We need to bring in like 3 guys. Safety has been brutal. One of the things and I know we're wrapping up soon, but one of the things I'll say on Marcus May and why I was never like, dude, you can't pay him top 5 safety money. I said it before the season. I said it in the offseason. I said it when he was franchised. I said it after 2 weeks. Even when Marcus May was healthy, there wasn't enough game-changing plays. Is he a good safety net? Yes. But does he make any difference making plays? He did have a couple sacks in there. He had some nice pass rushing things that happened. But is he getting interceptions? Is he forcing fumbles? Is he impacting the game in a way that changes momentum? Right? Just a momentum chasing play that the offense can come on the field with some excitement and jumping and like nothing. He's just kind of another guy out there that's better than average, but not great. And you can't pay great money to guys who are just better than average. And that's something Jets fans got to get out of their heads. So safety has got to be an area we improve. Corners, I would give a B-, only because they're not getting interceptions. If we had like 3 or 4 interceptions right now as a unit, not one player, but if we had like 4 interceptions right now through 9 games, I could give them a higher grade, but we don't, right? I think we have 2 as a team, and one's by a defensive end. So anyways, and then you go to coaching. I agree. LaFleur struggled the whole Zach Wilson piece. He's gone up to the booth. He's better. And somehow it's like he went up to the booth and it caused him to get better. And Ulbrich went down the elevator, right? I don't know how that happened. It's like, hey, when our offense figures stuff out, our defense forgot everything. In the defense, that's exactly how it happened. And we haven't been able to do enough adjustments, to really keep us in games. Like I said, how does it go from 7-7 to 42-10 without you figuring out some levers to pull just to keep us within a couple scores? We got to get better. But management, you already hit the owners. I agree with what you said on the owners. Man, I'm giving management a solid B+. And you could say, how is that with our record?
Yeah.
Elijah Moore, Michael Carter, Vera Tucker. Dude, if you get 3 starters, 3 solid to really good starters in one draft, it's a great draft, right? You're 50-50 on hitting on picks.
Yeah.
And we also got Michael Carter II. Eccles has looked like a solid contributor. So, I mean, I'm very happy. You know, Eccles, I don't know if he's a number 2 corner or number 4 corner, but he's always going to be one of the corners playing. And, you know, I'm Bryce Hall the year before. Guidry is a pinch hit corner who plays very, very well. So, you know, I got to give them their credit where credit was due. And they've rewarded Franklin Myers for playing well, which tells the other players that, hey, earn your money, we will pay you. And that's something that Jets fans has been screaming about. We don't keep our own. Well, when they earn it, we do. And I thought that was a good move in the season just to build like morale within the organization. I thought that was smart by Joe. So I got to give him credit. B+, you're hitting on your picks. Now we got to keep building on the foundation.
Absolutely. I agree 100% on that. A guy like Franklin Myers, 25 years old, I think it's something where you just have to bring him back. How do you know, I mean, you have to sign him to that deal. I think it's like you said, it's just good for the organization. Right now, he's got 4 sacks. You know, by the end of the season, you know, hoping it's 7+ or something like that. That would be good. But, you know, it's one of those things where it's a tough season. It hasn't been easy. But for me, I've actually enjoyed this season. I know that's tough for people to hear, but I just didn't have that many expectations like other people did. So I really wasn't heartbroken to see them, you know, lose games. I'm not. I'm actually surprised the offense puts up as many points as it does most games. And, you know, the defense is kind of where I thought it would be because they're so green. I just thought the cornerbacks would be worse than what they are. And they're actually better than what they are. You know, again, the Jets are coming up on their weak part of the season. The next 5-6 weeks, you know, you're playing teams that if they're better than you, they're better than you by just a little bit, but they're still bad. And, you know, if they're worse than you, you know, you're only better than them by just a little bit, if that. And so there should be a lot more competitive football in the month of December and the end of November here, where you could start to see it kind of, they can get some rhythm going. It's hard when you're playing good teams and they're kind of like, especially with good defenses and you're new and you're trying to figure everything out. It is not easy, a very frustrating afternoon, and everyone's green and young. So it's definitely not easy. Now, for this game, the Jets versus the Dolphins, if you got Myles Gaskins on your fantasy team, I would start him definitely. He's a guy that, you know, he could command anywhere from 3 to 6 receptions. You know, he's going to get the ball. The Jets have not been able to stop the run. So I definitely start Gaskins for sure. But as far as the actual game's concerned, you know, Brissett hasn't blown anybody away. You know, Tua hasn't blown anybody away. They really haven't been able to get a consistent running game going. Their defense is just starting to pick it up now. They're not the same team. So, you know, the way I see this game going, a lot of mistakes on both sides of the ball. Obviously, it's going to be a turnover game. Can't give up and cough the ball up on your side of the field and give easy points to the other team. The Jets are going to have to get pressure on the quarterback here, but it shouldn't be too bad. I mean, listen, when you look at the Dolphins, you look at the Jets, I think the Dolphins are 26 in the league as far as sacks allowed. The Jets are 21. So, you know, it's the Jets and the Dolphins. It's going to be a fun game because they do match up. These teams almost match up right this season like this as far as the statistics and basically the way they're playing. And so, yeah, you know, people say, well, they went off and they got Lamar Jackson. So how are the Jets going to go and beat them after they did the Lamar Jackson? It's a game of matchups, guys. And we know that, you know, even if you're playing a worse team, if the matchups are just different. Like, you know, like Kevin said, you know, everything is built around Lamar being able to have freedom to create with his legs. And when you're in his face constantly and you're putting pressure on him to put the ball up in the air, you know, he'll have a performance like that every once in a while, even though he is, to me, a very, very solid quarterback for everything that he does. But this is a different game. It's different circumstances, different team, different game plan. And so I really can't say that. One thing I will say about this Jets team as well, before we get to scores, is I think the Jets, when you look at their roster, I think they should kind of look at these wide receivers who are going to be free agents. I believe Crowder and Cole. And I think they should look long and hard about bringing these guys back, even though we do have Elijah Moore. I think the Jets should work on moving Denzel Mims, keeping Keelan Cole, and you have Moore. So it'd be like Davis, Cole, Moore. And I would even consider, which I don't even know if Jameson would even be up for it at this point. He probably wants a little bit more. But who knows? You never know. Consider really bringing those two back. on the team, because when you look at the way the team is, you don't have a tight end, and then all of a sudden Keelan's gone, Crowder's gone, Mims is gone, and then you're just kind of sitting there with Davis and Elijah Moore. So I think the Jets should look at it. They both could be probably brought back at a reasonable price, and you could build with this team and build some rapport amongst these guys with Zach Wilson over the offseason, with guys who were there all last year. Now they're back this year. That's the problem with bad teams too, is that, when you have bad teams on deck, it's kind of like you're firing the GM, and the coach is still there, but then the coach gets fired, the new GM's coming in, so there's players leaving and going, contracts are all over the place. You can't build any continuity, and as an offense, you have to build continuity. Again, why are the Patriots so good at what they do? There's a scheme-oriented, not player-oriented, and so when the new players come in, it's already set. They already know what to do. They're just telling these guys, repeat what I tell you to do, because it works. It's worked for 10, 12, 15, years already. Just do what we tell you to do. Nothing more, nothing less. We're not asking you to go out of your realms of what you need to do. And it works. It works. Again, these guys are all professionals. These guys, again, some of them were superstars in their high schools. These, to get to the NFL, you have to be good, even when you're technically bad. And so when you could come into an organization that has a game plan and a scheme that's already set up for you, and all you have to do is just use your athletic ability and not have to think too hard because everything is laid out for you, it's a lot different than a guy who's never called offense before, and he's trying to figure out who Elijah Moore is and how Elijah Moore fits in a new offense that he doesn't even know what it is yet. LaFleur is still trying to design his offense. So, it's a completely different scenario when you're looking at football teams, and that's how you have to break them down. You can't just look at a team and say, oh, well, they're 3-7, they suck. There's a lot that goes into that 3-7 and why they're there and who they were before they got there. Again, the Jets were a 2-win team, and it was just last year, and this team is the youngest team in the league. Again, you heard it, but it's true. You can't discount these factors when evaluating this football team. Again, if I was a Dolphins fan, I would be totally upset with this season because they have playoff expectations. But as a Jet fan, you should not have those same expectations. So the level of disappointment should not even be close to the same. But with that being said, I mean, I'm not against the Jets winning this game. I'm really not. I think Joe Flacco has more weapons at his disposal than he did last year. If I were the Jets, I would play Denzel Mims a little bit more since he has a familiarity with Joe Flacco, and he played well with Joe Flacco. The Jets, to me, their running game is a lot better. And so I think Joe has to get the ball out quickly. Don't sit in the pocket too long. And wind up fumbling and getting rocked, or ultimately you're going to see Mike White enter the game, and then everyone will be happy, I guess, at that point. But I think Joe has a chance to kind of move the ball down the field. He's a different thrower than Mike White. And the last couple of weeks for the Jets, the game tape on them, it's been all short routes, all dump offs and different things like that. I think Joe is going to add a different element to the game that'll kind of throw them off somewhat, as far as you're not going to, because you don't know who LaFleur really is as a play caller yet. So it's hard to really know, like, oh, well, this is what LaFleur likes to do here, or this is what LaFleur likes to call there. It's really hard to get a tab on him right now because, honestly, to me, it's almost a tale of two seasons. You had him going up into the booth, and then like the way the team looks, it just looks different offensively now that he's kind of gone upstairs. And so defensively, again, the Jets going to have to get pressure, man. This is the game where if the Jets want to win, they have to stop the run. They can't allow Gaskins and company to go for 150 yards on the ground. They just can't do it. They have to slow it down. But ultimately, I'm picking the Jets in this game. I don't care. I think the Dolphins suck, and I hate Miami, and I hate the Dolphins. And, they're 3-7. And so I'm going with the Jets winning this one 24-17.
Yeah, I have a very similar – the player that scares me the most in this game, and he's been a Jets killer before, is the tight end Gesicki. And Gesicki versus our linebackers versus our safeties is could be a nightmare. It could be the guy who just gets first downs, gets them out of trouble every time we make a play. But I also think their secondary has been super duper inconsistent, even when healthy. I think Byron Jones was a disaster signing for them. They're honestly an example of how the Jets could do it all wrong. They're the perfect example of why Joe Douglas is being patient, right? They went out and spent a bunch on free agents. They're still playing Kyle Van Noy, even though he's now on their division rival Patriots, because they gave him a $54 million contract. They made their two corners of the highest paid corners in the NFL. They have the highest paid cornerback tandem in the NFL, and nothing to show for it, right? Because they should not have paid Byron Jones. And I like Howard, honestly, as a player. But if you had a Howard, why are you paying two of them $17 million a year, right? That never made sense to me. And then they got all those draft picks.
You mentioned that in the offseason about Byron Jones. You said that about Byron Jones in the offseason, too. You're like, I don't know why they spent that money on him.
One
like that.
career interception when they signed him. It was like, what are you doing? And then, then they got all those draft picks, and they traded all the talent to get them, right? Tunsil and Minkah Fitzpatrick. And you can argue, how good Tunsil is or whatever, but they're two Pro Bowlers. And then they use those picks on Austin Jackson at tackle, who they moved to guard and just gave up on playing left tackle anymore, and a nickel corner. It's like, if you were going to draft a nickel corner, keep and pay Minkah Fitzpatrick. And then Tua has been a disaster with that draft pick too. So you've had terrible use of your draft picks, and then you let all your talent out the door, and all the talent you brought in wasn't as good as what you lost. It's exactly why you trust the process, you build slowly, and you don't try to microwave it with overspending on free agents that give you 1 or 2 years, and then you're paying them. We just talked about it on Live Rounds yesterday with CJ DeSimone from Weapons Hot, and all of these shows are on Jets World. I recommend that you follow it. But we're still paying Tremaine Johnson. We're still paying him this year. It's our last year, right? He hasn't been on the team in a while, and we're still paying him. So when people are like, oh, I want Joe Douglas to go into free agency, we have all this cap space, why isn't he paying him? Because, and I already gave the management a good grade. Dude, Lawson, they can get out of the contract next year. If he gets banged up and it doesn't work, it's really a 2-year deal. Franklin Myers, it's a 2-year extension from the end of this year. So we can get out of that deal fairly quickly too. He's being smart, and us not getting free agents is because we're not giving out bad contracts. And there's 32 teams. There's going to be one team that goes to a guy and says, I'm going to give you a Tremaine Johnson contract, right? The Giants just did it for Kenny Galladay. They paid $74 million for Galladay. We paid $32 million for Davis, and Davis is a 2-year contract we can get out after next year if we want. So the Jets' issues aren't going to be we can't get free agents. We're not going to give out bad contracts so that we can't re-sign Quinnen, or we can't re-sign Becton, or we can't re-sign ABT or Bryce Hall, or whoever we decide needs that next $15 or $16 million contract. Or, Quinnen Williams will be more than that. He'll be in the $20 million range. It is what it is. But the point of the story is you got to trust the process. You got to go through it. And going into that Miami game, they've done it all wrong, which is why, again, Mr. Smith already told you, coach is on the hot seat. GM is on the hot seat. And why? Half because of the decisions they made, half because of what you also said about the owners. They wanted Herbert. The owner wanted Tua. Now the coaches are going to get fired because the owners got involved, right? They could have Herbert right now. We'd have all different issues this game if they had Herbert and not Tua. But these are the types of things that you draft bad, you got a meddling owner, you do bad with the cap, you're where the Dolphins are today, which goes into this game. It's a long-winded way of saying Joe Flacco pisses you all off and wins a game, and we come out of this just like he said, 24-17. That's what I got. Pisses you all off.
Hey, JR, what do you got? What's your prediction for this game?
JR, did you go to bed? He forgot we're still running the show.
Our producer. Well, he got tired of watching the Jets give up running yards, so he probably fell asleep. But you know, when you look at it too, I think that's an excellent point, Kevin. When you talk about, how it seemed like the Dolphins were on the right track, and then they just started to rush it a bit because they started seeing the return on investment early. And honestly, the Dolphins popped a year early because they almost made the playoffs, but technically how they played last year is how they should be playing this year. And then next year, the Dolphins should really be pushing for a playoff spot, but they kind of accelerated a little bit. And I hate to say this because I do not like Ryan Fitzpatrick, but I really thought that the Dolphins should have brought Fitzpatrick back. And I know that people are going to say, well, when you have Fitz there, then how could you really get your rookie? Listen, it was an unusual situation in what Miami was doing, but it worked. It was just like, when Fitzpatrick does Fitzpatrick things, you throw Tua in and he's still kind of trying to learn. And that's the thing about this game that is really disappointing to me, is that now quarterbacks are not allowed to sit on the bench for 2 or 3 years anymore. And it doesn't make any sense because they fixed the rookie scale wage. And so quarterbacks really, and players in general, aren't getting killed. Teams aren't getting killed by these rookies that much with their deals, yet they're not allowing them to have that patience. Now, you have an NFL that's more dynamic. You have defensive linemen and backers who are faster than they ever have been. It's a passing league, which means that it's a defensive league that's trying to stopping the pass. So all the defense is geared toward trying to stop the pass. And then you're rushing these quarterbacks along. And it doesn't make any sense. I think another year of Fitzpatrick with them would have been beneficial. And you look to it was already hurt anyways this season. And the team rallied around Ryan. And so I thought it would have been a better move to keep him there. They rushed it along, and that's not what I want to see the Jets do for their football team. You're absolutely 100% correct when you talk about those contracts. The Jets have always been known as the team that overpays for players. You go into a meeting with the New York Jets in free agency to get a gauge on pricing, and then you come back to the team that you really want to go to, and you say, this is how much I'm worth. If not, I'll go to the Jets, or I'll go here, I'll go there. And Joe Douglas said, we're going to stop that nonsense. We're not going to allow players to walk in the building and use this as a scale wage for them to get paid. That's not how that works. Or we're not going to be the same New York Jets that sign you, for 10, 12 million over than what you're worth just because we're desperate for a winner. And I think you've already seen the dividends from that. The Jets have won the Jamal Adams trade 10 times over. He did not make Seattle better. He was not the final piece to a Super Bowl chip. And now the Jets are getting ready to have another first-round pick to give them 2 first-round picks in probably the top 10 next year. And for a rebuilding team, if you would take off the glasses and look at the team for it really is, that is absolutely excellent. And that's not counting all the mid-round picks we have as well. And as you know, if you're going to rebuild a team like the Ravens have and the Steelers and all these other teams that were good for years and years and years, is you do it through the draft, not through free agency, because more often than not, they're not going to pan out. They're over the hill, this, that, and the third. So you want to get the most bang for your buck, and you're going to get that from your drafted players. And you're also going to be able to resign them at a time where other people won't either, if you want to double down, if you think they're that good enough. And so that is what I like about this New York Jets team when it comes to the front office, is that, Joe can go and fix the offensive line in one off season because he doesn't allow his contracts to beat himself up that he can't make changes if that player winds up sucking. And so I like the way that the contracts are structured. I like the way this team is being built. Could the defense play better? Abso-friggin-lutely they could play better. They're playing awful right now. But am I going to sit here and hold their feet to the fire like I would the Dolphins, who, again, are supposed to be a playoff team? No, because I came into the season knowing that this was a rebuild. The quarterback gets a pass the first year, the coach and everybody else as they continue to build. And what I am looking to see is, again, the weak part of this schedule, okay, which is coming up this week all the way down to late December. You go ahead and you look better. You get wins and you move and progress against the Jaguars, against bad teams like this who are just as bad as you are. And so, again, me and Kevin have it 24-17. Jets win. We got some more home games coming up the second half of the season. The Jets have a chance to prove you fans a little that it is changing and it will get better. And I hope they do it for you, because you guys have been absolutely awful a lot of not no lie. Don't get me wrong. I love the fan base for Jets Guru, but I call it like it is, and I'm not going to sugarcoat anything for you guys. And you know that you guys got to be a little bit better. Okay. So it's just like, damn. But anyways, thank you guys for joining in. We went over again. When me and Kevin team up, we can kind of talk Jets football all day for hours on end. But he's got to go. Everyone's got to go, and we got to get this moving. So appreciate the support as always. Please share the show and keep it going. Obviously, the numbers are down because the Jets are bad. It happens every year, and then picks up in the offseason as the season gets closer. But keep sharing, keep supporting, keep building your team. Don't harass people in the stadium, please. These people pay money, and plus, you don't know what people are about. You talk, so all of a sudden they turn around and cut your head off, man. You don't know people, and New York is crazy. So please, mind your business, stick to what you know, stay in your lane. Love you guys so much. JETS, 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 Jets. We're out.
All I hear, go get the money. So I go get it. Hate means I do something right. So I'ma let 'em. Yeah, I'ma let 'em. Yeah, yeah.